Rewind-A-Dynamite from the post-wrestling site. AEW, lighting up the fuse. Sit back and enjoy the bubbly. As we hear from Jon and waiting. Where we're going, we don't need roads. And if the buck stops here, this thing might blow. Everything you hear are opinions of the show. And if you don't like it, go to the forums and let them know.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Rewind-A-Dynamite. I am John Pollock, alongside the man you love, Waiting.
Oops.
Encore for Waiting.
I'll figure this whole thing out eventually.
That's okay. I like the repeat function that we have on this.
It's
How are you
not the
doing?
easiest system to really do the simplest things with, but
Guys,
I'm
one
doing good,
day
John.
we got to do this show from like Way's perspective, because the man is doing a lot.
Man.
And it's very impressive, and it goes sometimes unappreciated when I will bring up a random fact, and within seconds, he's got a photo up, he's got a clip of something. I don't give him any kind of heads up. He's just flying by the seat of his pants. I'm asking him his thoughts on this. Tell me about, break this story down, Way. He's got 5 screens in front of him. You do a wonderful job, Way, as I just sit here.
I mean, multitasking is definitely a part of the job, and we both try to do the best with the two-man operation. But thank you, I appreciate that.
Pacing wise, what did you think of Dynamite tonight?
Fast as hell, but I enjoyed the show because it was all very good quality.
I felt, and maybe it was just me, like I'm not keeping tabs on this, it felt like there were way more natural commercials. Like we did have the picture-in-picture, but I felt like there were way more just commercials to like exhale as I'm watching this show, far more than usual. Like we still have breaks during the matches, don't get me wrong. And I was cruising along, and then I'm watching the main event. I'm like, man, they're gonna go past the top of the hour, and then I realized that during one of these breaks, I was like 2 or 3 minutes behind.
Okay.
Just detrimental for our setup here. And then I'm watching this, and thus I was late tonight tuning into this. So that was more on my end. But I found like there was, like if I had wanted to go to the bathroom during these 2 hours, I had options on this
Really?
show. Can't say that too often on Dynamite. Not too many. It's like, it's you got to do your business before and after, but not during.
Well, I can only speak from my perspective as somebody, who reviews the show, but I did not find any break during the show. Usually like if a segment ends, I have to really collect my thoughts. I have to write them down. And by the time I'm done digesting my thoughts, it's right back to the next interview that I have to watch and take notes for. And then it's on to the next segment. And so often I'm holding on to my thoughts from the prior segment while I'm trying to take notes for what I'm watching at the same time, because this thing is just, it's a very dense show that packs everything together. But again, they're not booking for people like you and I. Like they're booking the show for people that are just watching it and enjoying it. And I would contend for most people, they probably had a very good experience.
We also had about 16, and I'm not exaggerating, announcements from Excalibur before the main event for our next 3 shows between Rampage, Final Battle, and Winter is Coming. So
hey, we're building 2 different promotions here, and the man has to do it all within 30 seconds. Yeah,
they need to put out an Excalibur lozenge. I think that would do extremely well.
A lozenge? You think he uses lozenges?
I would think he would need one after yelling these things out and then calling a main event afterwards, and then he's got to call Rampage after this, and he's doing dark matches. I mean, this guy, these taping days, not a walk in the park for Excalibur.
No, not at all.
I wouldn't want to talk for days after one of these tapings. Be like,
maybe he doesn't. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe he's completely quiet at home.
Yeah, I mean, he's just a few steps away from like calling those 37 match marathons at the War Memorial that the WWF used to hold.
I was gonna say, yeah, long tapings and extended sessions are nothing new to a professional wrestling broadcaster, as you and I discussed this week on Rewind-A-Way.
A very fun edition of Rewind-A-Way, going back 30 years to May of 1992 to chat about an episode of Superstars that encompassed the arrival of Nails and his destruction of the Big Boss Man. We had the remnants of Sergeant Slaughter's electrocution as he is battling back to gain revenge on the Mountie, the evil Canadian cop. And then, of course, the the update on the Ultimate Warrior and how he is faring against this curse that has been placed upon him by Papa Shango, Charles Wright. All of this on one show. I mean, it was just
talk about dense.
It was the perfect amalgamation of all things WWF 1992 here in this one visual.
Yeah. When Robert Rocky chose this show, I didn't know if I was looking forward to it that much. I mean, it's just like, oh, okay, it's an addition of superstars, some like a bunch of cartoonish gimmicks, but like watching it, I always enjoy watching WWF superstars. It's like, I mean, as an adult, like it's just so, first of all, it's very nostalgic. So there's that too, but it's also just like very light. You don't have to like pay so much attention to really kind of get the storylines, and everything on it is so incredibly colorful, either ridiculous or just incredibly fun. So, and that was certainly the case with this one, because there was a lot of this that was ridiculous and also fun.
So we have a whole review of that show and a catch up on the time period as well, looking at some of the headlines from that week in 1992, including Bill Watts' new commandments that he has for the talent in WCW. We talk about SummerSlam's location being locked down, the early reports on the Razor Ramon character in WWF before he had made it to television, and the doll that would become Rocco in its first incarnation as Freckles. All of this, plus Don Owen shutting down the Portland territory. A lot going on in this week in history in professional wrestling, but all roads lead to Nails.
Yeah, absolutely. And people's feet getting lit on fire.
That is right. One, who is it? Brian Brieger? Was that the gentleman's name? Yes.
That is correct. Yes.
We get also enhancement talent, including Dwayne Gill and the future headbanger thrasher, Glenn Ruth, in action on this episode of Superstars. So runs the gamut. So a precursor. We got a headbanger, we got Gilbert, and we got the Godfather on this show, among others. And a prior incarnation of Big Boss Man who would update his look in the Attitude Era.
You never know who's going to show up on WWF Superstars.
That's right. Okay, so you can catch that Rewind Away. It's up, postwrestlingcafe.com, $6. Every level, you get access to our bonus shows, which we have 3 of this week. We will have Rewind to SmackDown Friday night as Rampage looks to shake things up, and we will talk about that later. And then Saturday night, another post show for patrons. It is the Final Battle post show. Kate and Way will be running through Saturday's card from Texas. That is now up to, I believe, 7 matches. We'll go through the card after the Dynamite review, headlined by Chris Jericho and Claudio Castagnoli, and now a double dog collar match between FTR and the Briscoes. I mean, could they have just come on and said, everyone is going to bleed? That's pretty much what this match could have been billed as for Saturday night, the 3rd installment of the FTR Briscoe series of 2022.
I'm hyped. Honestly, we'll talk a lot more about that match announcement, but it was, to me, the exact thing a show like this needed.
All right. All of that can be found postwrestling.com. We will also have a UFC 282 post show this weekend and the NXT Deadline post show. Braden and Davey will be going live here on this channel, youtube.com/postwrestling. You can subscribe, get notified whenever there is a live show going on, but they will be live late Saturday night after Deadline to talk about whether the New Day are the new NXT Tag Team Champions or not.
That is correct. The New Day making an appearance, and also the Iron Survivor
Challenge.
Challenge, yes. The ISC, the Iron Survivor Challenge. Will this be the only Iron Survivor Challenge matches that will take place ever? It's a real proof of concept that probably has to be successful. So we'll hear Poison Rana's Davey and Braden talk about it as Up Next moves to the Post Wrestling feed. But of course, Poison Rana starting their own thing, very, very busy themselves. So stay subscribed to Up Next. They are now known as Poison Rana.
There we go. All right. Let's talk a bit about Tony Khan. He held a call with the media on Wednesday, a very noteworthy call, and he spent the first 20 minutes of the call kind of doing a catch-up on what his personal life has been like the last couple of months, and has obviously kept this information pretty quiet in terms of any kind of disclosure, that his mother unfortunately went through a number of health issues, having 2 strokes. And they found a spot on her heart, and this required heart surgery back in October. And the first stroke occurred after All Out. So we go back and, at the time, describing this as probably the most difficult time of Tony Khan's professional career run, or at least of running AEW, and you compound it with what he was going through personally. I cannot imagine what these several months were like from him on both fronts. I mean, you would think that work might be a distraction, and that was obviously a very, very difficult time, both personally and professionally. So he described that it was also during this period that his mother was recovering from heart surgery, that William Regal had reached out to Mega, their chief legal officer, and essentially Regal, I guess, has a option at the end of his deal for 2023, and he was requesting that AEW not pick up the option for next year, with the request that he can go back to WWE in order to work with his son, who, I mean, was on television last night as Charlie Dempsey. So Tony Khan has, we have heard the stories of others requesting releases, and it seems like Tony Khan has pretty much put his foot down of not letting people out of their deals. But Regal called him, and Khan he had to take the call outside of the hospital where his mother was recovering. And, given what he was going through personally, he did not want to prevent someone from working with their child. And he did state that, he would not be able to accommodate these requests for many people, but stated, that William Regal will be wrapping up with the company at the end of this year. They are not going to pick up the option for 2023. And it required a lot of work on his behalf, that there was a complete overhaul, major changes in the lead up to Full Gear, and stated, like, after the fact, there was that Regal MJF segment that he thought was tremendous. And then, just adding that, this is a family first company, but did note, like, he is not going to be able to facilitate, all of these requests if they were to come his way. So he is, later he was he was asked by David Bixenspan about whether this is a release that comes with any conditions. And this was really interesting because he stated that, based on the wording, is that he does not expect William Regal to be able to appear on screen next year for WWE, that this is essentially, he's being let out of this deal, or they're not picking up the option so that he can take a behind the scenes role, and added that, they have been extremely accommodating throughout this period. So he was very surprised when Paul Levesque put out that tweet right around War Games. I think it was the day of, and including Regal in there, and kind of felt like that was he didn't really go out and say he was insulted by it or that it threw a wrench into anything, but he certainly felt it was they had not wrapped up everything with Regal yet when that tweet went out. So I mean, this is going to bring up the obvious question of whether, in fact, we do see William Regal in any on-screen capacity or not, because this is a company, like, quite frankly, I feel WWE, the tweet says everything. The fact that they would put that out in this kind of delicate negotiating situation, that they put this out and kind of, are just like, well, if there's a situation where there's like a pull apart backstage and Regal is one of the many, I mean, it's like, what's this line of being on television or not? I mean, it's just one that I would certainly be skeptical of WWE honoring whatever there is on their end.
Unless it's specifically put in writing that William Regal can't appear on TV. I don't know how that would even, how would they would be able to enforce that, like they're not picking up the option, which means he would be completely free to do whatever he wanted with his career.
Well, it's a conditional release. So it's, it's like you are getting this release based on, like, you are leaving for this. It kind of reminds me of when Lex Luger wanted to get out of his WCW deal and said, like, I'm going off, I'm not going to go do wrestling and he couldn't do it for a year and then signed the WBF deal. So it was like this workaround that he could not wrestle for WWF. That was part of his release from WCW. And therefore,
is this a release though, or are they simply not picking up an option? Like, what is this?
It's a conditional release. So, I mean, it's like, we are great. Like, they have the
long?
power.
What are the terms? Like,
it sounds like it's a year. Like Tony Khan said next year that he would not be able to appear. So it would seem that, that would be the extent of that period of time.
Okay, we'll see. We'll see. I'm certainly skeptical because unless it's specifically written, I mean, this is a great coup for Triple H to be able to bring somebody directly off of a prominent AEW TV storyline onto his television show to be able to say we got one of those then. But I mean, of course, you have to wonder if Regal himself, knowing the extenuating circumstances that were granted, this what sounds like a real privilege for him to be able to exit his role
AEW
early.
is like, listen, AEW doesn't need to do this. I can honestly state that if I was in that position, I don't think I would be after that tweet and everything like that. It's like, I understand a father wants to work with his son, but you know what? That same company let you go and we brought you in and we have hardly misused you. I mean, if the people brought in, you could state William Regal has been front and center on every week's programming, and they picked him up when, there were very limited options for William Regal at that stage of his career a year ago. And, you're in the middle of a war. I don't know if I would be that, if I would acquiesce to that level. So I don't think the other way around that it would be necessary that we would see this reciprocated.
Yeah, but and another interesting question would be if Tony Khan hadn't made this story public, the circumstances surrounding Regal's release public, would that have maybe loosened the pressure for Paul Levesque or Triple H to use Regal? Because I think using Regal now will make Levesque look bad to the hardcore audience, the audience that's aware and the audience that has heard Tony Khan describe this move as sort of like a very, sort of sympathetic type of move that he was doing almost as a favor. For Hunter to just put him on TV after that would very clearly paint him as a bad guy in the situation, taking advantage of somebody else's goodwill. So I thought, I mean, it's very nice to see like Tony, I think, actually be so upfront with the media, and obviously like our thoughts are with his family as his mom makes a recovery from a very serious situation. So
who he did state that is doing better. She's at home, she's recovering. So that was just the the latest information. And absolutely, we wish our best to their family.
Yeah, but it was at least a bit of refreshing to like get some real clarity on a situation for once. That has to do with AEW rather than just having reporters and the audience, just kind of bat around with a lot of like little bits of information and trying to piece things together. Were you satisfied with this conference call?
I thought so. I thought like there was a lot of news out of this show, out of this call. I mean, addressing the Regal thing, and he wasn't even prompted. Like he wanted to get all of this out at the beginning. Like it was, and he had stated as much about that it would be addressed on the call regarding Regal, and then you had the angle tonight that seemed to be the official write-off of Regal that they did. We'll talk about that more during the show. But some other notes, obviously the Regal stuff was the most focused upon in the call, but he also teased that there would be some announcement regarding ROH's television future, that he was not going to answer on the call, but would talk about Saturday night, whether it's going to be a streaming deal or not. He certainly indicated like he's at least going to address it Saturday night of what is coming up for ROH in the new year, but stated that after this week, he would be focusing less on ROH on AEW programming. So for those that feel like there has been too much focus on it, like that seems like it is going to be greatly diminished after they get through this pay-per-view cycle. Brandon Thurston asked about Friday's very low number for Rampage, and Tony Khan did not deflect or try to defend what Rampage is. He said he's looking to put on strong matches. He expects a big card this week, and it's time to put all hands on deck on Friday. So, I mean, that's all you can say at this point. Like, it's a show that needs something, but now it's going to be what are those elements you do, and whether that audience is going to come back. I think they have their work cut out for them for Rampage. It's not going to be a 1 week fix. It's going to have to be something that is a pattern over time to build that show up. But, for their sake, hopefully Friday was rock bottom, because I can't fathom them doing lower than a 0.08 on Friday night.
Well, their answer to it, at least in the immediate aftermath, was to put Jon Moxley versus Konosuke Takeshita on that show. It's still I would say a match that is very much catered towards the hardcores. No story, not even really a promo from Takeshita. But I mean, is that going to be enough? Is Rampage going to continue to be catered towards maybe the more diehard fan who really likes, for instance, the sound of a Takeshita match without much build to it? I definitely think having Mox on will make a difference, but will it be a significant difference? We'll see.
I thought they should have announced a promo with the Elite. Like there was none of that. They weren't on Dynamite at all. I think just having them, just even if it's a tape thing, to have them on Friday, like to have that best of 7 series, I think you need to hear from them or do something, and that puts 3 of your big stars on Rampage.
But we know what promos are like on AEW Rampage, right? Like they tend to be like video packages. Anytime they advertise,
they don't have
we
to
will
be.
hear from. Yeah, they could be an in-ring segment. You're right. Yeah, but
like now is the time that you kind of just rip out the weeds and look at how this show is being constructed, because this is not working. This is not working. There's nothing that we have to be faithful to on the format of Rampage. I think now is the time you experiment and you try different things.
It was interesting for me to hear him talk about, the ROH sort of criticisms, and it's been one that's kind of been thrown out there a lot by the audience about there being too much ROH involvement. And I think specifically it's not so much too much ROH involvement because the roster is exactly the same.
It's AEW guys, essentially.
It's more so, I think, the abundance of titles. And then you do have like the occasional sort of like random, ROH names from the past just kind of making appearances. Although I don't know how like detrimental really it does cloud things. And I think more so like for the audience, it really clouds like the framework of what you're actually watching. You have so many different types of like threads and title lineages to really kind of follow. It certainly clouds things and has probably in a way watered down a Rampage. Yeah.
Well, even deciphering, like one example would be the Kingdom. Like, are the Kingdom AEW? Are they Ring of Honor? It's like they came in, they've disappeared. There's no update on them. And like, there might be a very valid reason they're not around, but you don't know that. It's just, you saw this act come in. They closed a show here in Toronto, and we had, Taven get a title match, and poof, they just disappear, and they're gone and forgotten now. And they only showed up in October.
Right. Yeah. He also gave an interesting answer. Do you remember the name of the podcast that he appeared on recently? Talking.
Yeah, it was like the Battleground podcast. I
guess that is correct. Where he kind of gave an answer about that, about how, when he used to watch Nitro, and this might have been in response to like some Eric Bischoff criticism, but like when he used to watch Nitro, random names would just pop up and they would wrestle, and he thought that was great. And that's probably part of his philosophy with this, like, oh, people must recognize the Kingdom. People must really, recognize like Shane Taylor Promotions. It's just throw them on TV and then we'll do the storytelling afterwards. The problem is, it's just like there's no staying power with any of these names. They make these appearances and then they disappear for a long time. You don't even get a chance to tell their stories afterwards, beyond these sort of 1 week appearances. So is it because he has so much to try to juggle at once with two different rosters? Is that part of the problem? Don't know.
Well, it's a lot of guys, and you're going to have, different, fans of performers that you want to see in certain positions, but there's so many of them that, you can make your case of a Bandito and where he is, or even Takeshita of how he's come in and he's been on Dark up until, Rampage this week. Like, we can go down the list. There's so many, and you can't push everybody. Like, not everyone is going to be a top guy. There are going to be tiers of them, but at the same time, you're looking at sort of, is this the right time then to be bringing in a certain talent that's just accumulating more talent for the war chest that we have in case of emergency. We've got a bench that is deeper than anyone's roster, but at the same time, it's, if you're a fan of one of these guys,
doesn't matter if like nobody knows who these people are.
Well, fans aren't tuning in for the depth, for the guys that are backstage or that are just being utilized once a month. If you're a fan of a guy and he comes in with a big pomp and circumstance, like a Bandito did with Jericho, and here we are several weeks later, and I would argue that this time period, the buzz factor is gone in record time. Like it's not even a 2-week window you have. It's like 7 days, and then people, their minds are on to the next big thing, the next big match, and whatever little momentum you have, it's fleeting.
As far as Rampage goes, like this to me, from what I recall, it's not the first time he's kind of like, talked about possibly revamping the show, and I don't think we've seen much evidence of it up until this point. So we'll see if this round is any different. The caveat, of course, over the past several months, of course, has been everything going on in the man's personal life as well as professional life with this roster. We knew he had to deal with the whole Elite Punk situation, but having this Regal situation affecting the Blackpool Combat Club as well, that he had to juggle in terms of storyline, and in addition to that, all the personal stuff he's had to deal with, maybe justifies some of the lack of quality control.
And the fact that like he's still doing the Jaguars work on top of this, like this is someone who has, like, I don't know how he carves out all this different stuff, which is why you look at the idea of, he was asked like of ROH and AEW, like he is the head of creative for both of those. And those are full-time jobs right there alone, but without running a company, without working for multiple companies. And you're looking at the idea of him talking about more content, more hours of programming, and how ROH can fit into that. You're adding a lot, and I don't care if you're the greatest booker in the world, when you're doing that many hours and it's all coming from sort of like one source, I think like you do run the risk of not just creative burnout, but you fall into like your booking preferences spread out over all of these hours and not having sort of that variety. And you can get input here and there from your other talent, but it's ultimately your vision that is being carried out, and you're extrapolating that over multiple brands, multiple programs. And I think it's healthy to have other people kind of given the reins, that an ROH that you can delegate that to another vision. Like you can maybe oversee like big picture ideas, but in terms of the week to week booking, like I just would not want to spread someone so thin when you have your prime focus on this brand, and now you're bringing in an ROH one, but one that he is very closely tied to financially, obviously.
So I believe in this call, he also talked about maybe showed some revealed a little about the creative teams for the two brands, and they are different, but there's crossover.
Well, he was talking kind of about that he's the head creative for both, and that some, in regards to the coaches, like they have certain coaches that are specific to one brand that don't coach on the other, and right. There is a lot of crossover between the two, but they also do have some distinct people working specific to one brand and not the other. So it's not just like Raw and SmackDown back in the day, where the writers were doing both shows, even if they were like designated to one. And then he just also noted about FTR, who, were victims of a lot of the changes in the booking this year through no fault of their own, mentioning CM Punk breaking his foot as one of those examples. And they have been very supportive of Tony Khan and what he has been going through of late, and they have had their own challenges. So he's very complimentary towards FTR. So it was a very informative call from Tony Khan. You had, a very real life situation that, he shared with everybody off the top. And also, addressing like the elephant in the room, which this time was William Regal. And I will add that it does feel like since Full Gear and the return of the Elite, that the focus on CM Punk has gone down. And that's even with the Chicago reaction. And it does feel less of a pressing topic as it felt in obviously September, but extending to October and November, like right through to Full Gear. Like it does feel like there are other things that are, top of mind for people.
Doesn't seem like we're getting any sort of movement in the story. I mean, the man is injured, and it doesn't look like Tony's making any sort of significant decision until the injury is over, right? I mean, he's clearly off of TV, not on the video game cover anymore. I guess I wonder, what news there is really to pry for at this moment.
The only news will be if they come to an agreement on a release, and I feel, especially given this Regal thing, I have a bit more optimism that they may be more forthcoming and volunteer their side when it comes time, if that is an option that they go to. Let's move on to a few other news and notes. First of all, Richard Holliday of MLW he spoke with SI.com, revealing that he was recently diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma. He is going through chemotherapy, and they believe that he will be able to make a full recovery. But that's a very scary diagnosis to have for a young individual. Richard Holliday, he's a very talented talker. Was involved in MJF's group with MLW, and then kind of took the reins over on Fusion. But yeah, he had just been having issues where he was feeling just really exhausted and tired, and then finally got checked out. And that is something that you just cannot be bracing for in any stretch. So anyway, want to wish the best to him as he is going through chemotherapy, which he said he is halfway through the 12 rounds of it. So hopefully it's a full recovery for Richard Holliday. Raw from Monday night, they did 1,536,000 viewers. They were down 8% this week in viewership. The demo was actually up 2%, but the story of Monday's show was hour number 3, which fell to 1,263,000 viewers and a 0.35 in the demo. So the demo fell 20.5% in hour 3, and throughout the show, the audience dropped 28%. This was, of all the data that is out there for the history of Raw, would be the least watched hour of Raw
Ever.
I mean, what a distinction. I mean, if you're gonna do bad, make it the lowest of all time. You don't want to be the third lowest of all time. So that is what Raw achieved on Monday night. Just a mammoth tune out in the third hour. And they were going up against Monday Night Football, although not a giant game that they had going on. Although there was the Manning cast, which had Dana White on as a guest. Maybe that was everyone was just flipping over to hear Dana White hanging out with Tom Brady, but not Tom Brady, Peyton Manning. So yeah, just a horrible third hour. I mean, that was the story of the show, and dipping under 1.2 million for the second to last quarter as well. So it was that was the start of the women's 3-way, and then a small increase for that final quarter. But yeah, very, very low.
Right. Yeah. So who gets the blame for this one?
I mean, I don't look at this as, necessarily like you single out things. Like, certainly it was like there was nothing announced that was captivating enough for people. But it was a third hour that, I mean, we see the usual third hour drop.
Did people not watch this poker game? Okay. Tozawa clearly had, a lot to fight for against Dominic.
Well, listen, I watched this episode of Raw, and by hour 2, if I did not have to do the show, I would not have made it to the end of this show. Not a chance. This thing was just grinded to a halt for me in the second hour. And that the culmination of the poker game and the women's 3-way, like none of this stuff would have been holding me for that third hour. But this was more pronounced than usual. So we will see if it's a residual effect, if it was just a bad week in terms of that third hour, and what you do with this third hour. Like, it is almost guaranteed it is guaranteed you're always going to have the lowest hour in the third, and how much you put into that hour 3. It's almost like you put enough that it's going to keep your loyal audience, but for your biggest attraction, like, it makes a lot more sense to be putting it earlier in the show rather than saving it for the end. It's like the idea of closing Raw, it's kind of it's not like a great distinction, like headlining Raw. It's like your odds are you're going to be among the least watched quarters of the entire night. So it's where you put a match that I would not be putting my most important angle or match at the end of the show.
That was the strategy they had. They peaked the 10 o'clock hour really for your real main event, and then everything else was just, here's some bonus.
I mean, it was Becky Lynch wrestling. Like, that's still, she's just come back, so that's still, you would think is something. But yeah, there was maybe you can blame poker. Poker, not maybe you limit it to under 5 segments for one night. NXT, on the other hand, did 534,000 viewers, a 0.13 in 18 to 49. And Where they really got hurt was their oldest audience. 50 plus was down 26% this week, and that to me, I would look at the Georgia runoff coverage that was happening on Tuesday night with Herschel Walker not getting his Senate seat. This would be a rare example of like the NXT audience being affected by something happening in the real world. So that brought them down. This tied for their second lowest number of the year and was pretty much identical to their lowest, which was like 1,000 viewers less. Although the demo didn't have anywhere near the drop of their overall audience as well. And 18 to 34 was up this week. So you had that as well to go for NXT, which had the surprise appearance of the New Day on the show. So they are going to challenge Pretty Deadly at Deadline on Saturday night. Did you get to see the New Day's appearance, and does this bulk up Saturday's interest?
Yeah, I think so. Anytime you have a main roster act pop up in NXT, no matter how stale they've been on the main roster, I mean, being in big fish in a small pond automatically gives them a bit of a fresh coat of paint. For the first time in a long time, especially if you're a tag team in the WWE, you cycle through a lot of opponents very frequently. So the chance to get to see the New Day in a different environment against a fresh set of opponents and Pretty Deadly, I think at least will be something novel for both of them, both of the teams. For Pretty Deadly, the biggest match that they've ever had, with the biggest spotlight. Who wins? How did they get out of this one?
I mean, to be honest, like the New Day, after losing to the Usos, it's like they've sort of hit a wall in WWE.
They're not going to lose job to Pretty Deadly, okay, in NXT. That's hard.
I'm saying the opposite, that if you wanted to do a run with them with the NXT titles, like there is nothing holding them. Like I would think you would do the deal where they're appearing on both shows, which I don't think is the worst idea at all.
Kind of defeats the purpose of NXT though, right? Like to have champions that are already established as New Day.
I mean, if you have an idea, if it's something where it's just having the New Day for a month and there's some payoff to it, where they drop the titles to another team or do a rematch with Pretty Deadly, like you could certainly flip it. It's not the worst idea. Also, we have Braun Breaker and Apollo Crews who went out fishing. I have never seen a go home angle where they went fishing together.
It's a place to try new ideas, NXT.
And then Elba Fire will take on Isla Dawn, and then the two Iron Survivor Challenge matches. We had Axiom getting the wild card spot for the men's match, joining Carmelo Hayes, JD McDonough, Grayson Waller, and Joe Gacy. And then Indy Hartwell joins Kiana James, Roxanne Perez, Cora Jade, and Zoe Stark. So these matches, we will see how they turn out. They are 25-minute matches where two people start, and then every 5 minutes, a new entrant comes in. So unlike the Royal Rumble, it's actually to your disadvantage to get the last number, because the first two entrants have 25 minutes to score as many pinfalls as possible. The last entrant has 5 minutes to beat all the other pinfalls. So you actually want to be in this match earlier. And then if you get pinned, you go to the dreaded penalty box.
Yeah, it's one that I have no idea how well it's going. Like what exactly is the appeal of a match type like this? What is this sort of secret ingredient that the people that have come up with this have came up with that will really wow us? Because I think a match type that's been built up, this strong, has to live up to, comparisons to War Games, to the Elimination Chamber, to anything that might become an annual thing. So, I'm very curious to see new ideas in professional wrestling, and we'll see how this one works out.
Fans love clocks, and you guarantee that they have the countdown at the end that hopefully will be dramatic.
Yeah.
For both cases, like, you're doing the match twice on top of it, which to me is always tough when, you do the match, and even if it gets over great, it's like, okay, then we got to do almost like a different version of the same match in the same night.
And you're also asking, a lot of some very inexperienced people in this match to kind of have to hold up, they're part of this act, and trying to convey a brand new match type to a brand new wrestling audience. So we'll see how they do it.
Last thing is the UFC pay-per-view on Saturday night, which has Jan Blachowicz and Magomed Ankalaev fighting for the vacant light heavyweight title as Glover Teixeira, the odd man out, who will have to be watching this from home. And then Paddy Pimblett is taking on Jared Gordon, second from the top in a lightweight fight. Did you follow any of the Paddy Pimblett drama from Wednesday?
I read your update today, so I'm well aware. Yeah, let us know.
So Paddy Pimblett had Dana White on his podcast this week, and Paddy Pimblett just went in on reporter Ariel Helwani and just basically stated that if I'm going to do any interviews, I want to be paid for my interviews. And he insulted Ariel, accused him of just essentially leeching off of fighters, making money off of them. And if you want to have me on, you've got to pay for me. Dana, of course, is just like a child, just laughing and giggling at all of this. So they just made it a destroy Ariel fest on their show. And I knew Ariel was going to address this when he put up the picture of Tupac. Tune in today for my show. So it was like, okay, he's going to address this. He had hit him up, showing on his Instagram and everything. So he starts off his show, and he went an hour and 10 minutes solo addressing this. And this man showed up with receipts. Okay, he woke up in the morning and he wasn't even aware of this. And I don't know what time he heard about this interview, but dude, this guy gets his ducks in a row. He had texts, he had voicemails, he had tweets, and he just systematically went line by line of this interview and just destroyed these two. Stated, I have no issue if you think I'm a bad journalist, but I hate liars. And he just went and in his defense, I mean, they're on there and they're insinuating that he was fired from these jobs, which was untrue. And he will never pay anybody for an interview. It's Paddy Pimblett. I just feel he's really, this is a guy that has, all of a sudden he has gained a lot of popularity. He's got a tremendous sponsorship deal with Barstool Sports. And you know what? If outlets are going to pay this guy to go on their shows, God bless the guy for taking these offers. You are under no obligation to go and do interviews if you're not interested in it. It's that's it. But the idea that a reporter makes a living doing work seemed very foreign to Paddy Pimblett. I cannot do this response justice. If you have the time, it's over an hour, and it's just man, you whatever your opinion is of Ariel Helwani, if you come at this guy, be ready, okay? Because this guy is just he was prepared for this takedown, and it was an hour of just carving this conversation up and leaving no doubt in terms of where he stands on things.
Yeah, I would not want to mess with Helwani when it comes to a verbal joust. So I'm sure it was very entertaining.
It was the most attention this fight has received for Saturday night. It's this was the card where MJF and Paddy Pimblett had been going back and forth on Twitter, and MJF at one point teased showing up at this pay-per-view, although they really haven't followed up in any way with that. And it seemed like those two were kind of planning their own sort of idea. Both, of course, Paddy Pimblett is represented by, he's sponsored by Barstool Sports, and MJF very much ingrained in with Barstool that we've seen in many times. So, I mean, it would be beneficial to both to do something that drums up interest, but they've kind of cooled it off on that. So anyway, that's coming up on Saturday night, and Eric and I will be live Sunday, 1 Eastern, to go through UFC 282. Very busy weekend coming up with Final Battle, Deadline, UFC. Lots as always. But I know what you're all here for. You are ready for the Dynamite review. And here we come in at the 44-minute mark. From Cedar Park, Texas. This crowd, bravo. Mm-hmm. They were awesome. Just a tremendous crowd. And this was 3,200 people. Sounded like 8,000. It was an incredible crowd. This felt like the party vibe that Dynamite really spread its wings, attracting to their arenas. Like this was just such a great crowd. And when Dustin Rhodes came out and you heard the reception he got, and it would only be amplified later with Ricky Starks. But man, and this was a crowd that from start to finish, they were just hot for almost everything on the show.
Completely. You could tell, like, I mean, the number feels modest, I suppose. But they certainly sounded 10 times what they were. It was a great atmosphere.
They started off with a recap of MJF's attack last week, stating that Regal is recovering and Bryan Danielson is by his side. So no Bryan Danielson on the show, though we would get a follow-up with William Regal. Kicking things off is the Dynamite Battle Royale. So the participants include Ricky Starks, Brian Cage, Ethan Page, Matt Hardy, Shawn Dean, Dalton Castle, Jungle Boy, The Butcher, The Blade, Orange Cassidy, Waze Pick, Kip Sabian, Lee Moriarty, and making his return in his first match since August, Dustin Rhodes, who lives in Austin, comes out. Huge reaction for Dustin Rhodes, who has stated that next year will be his final year of in-ring action.
We'll see about that. I mean, a wrestler's retirement, I learned not to take those that seriously.
So they do repeat that the winner will face MJF for ownership of the ring, but in a new wrinkle this year, the winner gets to choose when and where they challenge MJF.
They explained all of this actually last week, but it was done so poorly and like in the middle of so many other things going on and with interruptions in between that everybody coming out of last week's show was confused about what they were actually challenging them for. Was the title on the line? It is not. I thought they did a really poor job of explaining it, but I mean, by this point, I imagine everybody understands.
There are chants for Ricky Starks from the beginning. Big pop, as I mentioned, for Dustin. Orange Cassidy did the spot where he skins the cat, and Kip Sabian tried to bite his hands, but Orange Cassidy hangs on, and then the Blade is on the floor and eliminates Orange Cassidy. Crowd's furious. Then Dustin breaks out a Canadian Destroyer onto Kip Sabian. Then the Butcher sends Dustin off the apron with a lariat. Crowd is upset about that one. And then we continue here. The boys save Dalton Castle on multiple attempts, but then Brian Cage dumps him out. Jungle Boy, who I'm pretty sure Excalibur referred to as Jack Lanza instead of Jack Perry, comes off the turnbuckle with the double knees to eliminate
he's
Brian
changing
Cage.
Both names. Yeah, like he's getting a brand new identity altogether.
Yes, Black Jack Perry. And then Jungle Boy leaps with a Hurricane Rana, sending Lee Moriarty out, but Big Bill Morrissey is on the floor.
Is that the new name?
They were calling him Big Bill.
They dropped the W. He is now Big Bill, which
I think Morrissey.
I think is much better. Yeah.
BBW. Rolls off the tongue.
Yeah.
Well, he dumps Jungle Boy out with a boot and then gives Jungle Boy the nastiest looking apron bomb. I mean, this guy's vertebrae looked like it just shattered into a million pieces when it hit the apron.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Jesus.
Looks scary.
So Ethan is demanding that Matt Hardy raise his arm, and Matt Hardy has to go along, but then he does the chants behind Ethan's back. Our final four are Ethan Page, Matt Hardy, Ricky Starks, and Shawn Dean. And like, we have a story here that Shawn Dean, of course, he kicked off the year with a DQ win against MJF, and then in the rematch, beat him by countout. So you actually do have a thread here of Shawn Dean attaching himself and to like take this ring off of MJF. Unfortunately, that was not going to play out. But this crowd, dude, they got behind Shawn Dean when he fired up before his elimination here by Ethan Page. Which was just like, if you're following along, it's like, it made perfect sense that they let Shawn Dean stay in this long.
I think it's sort of like this final four, final five spot is always a great place for an underdog or like an unexpected person to really get a spotlight and to gain something out of a battle royal, and for people to create a significant memory coming out of a battle royal that wouldn't necessarily happen for a Shawn Dean otherwise. I thought it was really smart.
So Matt Hardy goes for the twist of fate, and Ethan Page thinks it's a formality, so he turns his back, and Starks stops Hardy, throws him out, and then hits a tornado DDT onto Ethan Page. The crowd goes nuts. Page lands a roundhouse kick and goes for the running power slam. It's the Rock Big Show finish from the Royal Rumble, except they pulled it off. And Ricky Starks reverses and sends Page over the top to the floor, winning the match in 13 minutes and 8 seconds, and the crowd goes nuts.
Yeah, really smooth on that finish. Looked great, and I think this heated crowd really made everything feel awesome. Good
Ricky
spotlight
Starks should be outside this arena after Rampage, shaking every hand on the way out. Thank you.
Absolutely. Dustin too. Can join him and shake plenty of those hands as well.
Yeah.
But,
I enjoyed. I usually don't enjoy these battle royals, but I thought the crowd added a lot to this one, and I enjoyed it. And there was more to come afterwards, but this whole first hour was about making Ricky Starks into a viable challenger.
It wasn't a battle royal where I felt like they tried to accomplish too much. You had specific focuses for different portions of the match. You got a bit of an update on the Ethan Page, Matt Hardy storyline situation, built to Orange Cassidy and Kip Sabian as well. So it was clear and concise and gave you. I suppose I shouldn't have been surprised, seeing the result, knowing that we were in Austin. It kind of felt obvious, but the idea of Ricky Starks having a title shot next week, but also having this sort of diamond ring claim is also kind of interesting. Is it their way of kind of protecting him after a unsuccessful title challenge? He loses the title match, but he still gets the ring.
It's one way to go. I would hate to see this guy fail twice.
There's no reason for MJF to have the ring anymore.
No. MJF comes out to the ring. He says Danielson isn't here tonight because he's terrified of MJF. And the crowd is all chanting for Ricky. And he says that Ricky is talented, and he compares Ricky Starks, stating, "You are the absolute drizzling shits." Or should I say, a Rudy Poo candy ass, because you stole everything from the guy. You're a dollar store Dwayne. And therefore, I'm going to call you the Pebble. And I'm going to put this pebble into my pocket and skip your scrawny ass all the way back to Billy Corgan to go fight on YouTube where you belong. So he just eviscerates Ricky Starks. And this crowd is with Ricky Starks, but this is always going to be the challenge, is that he's going to be so entertaining with these promos that you're going to hope that the crowd stays with the babyface. And that is what they did here, because Ricky Starks got his response and just cut the promo of his life here, starting off by calling him Maxi Pad and a fifth-rate Roddy Piper who smells like paint thinner. I mean, at that point, all bets are off at this point. The gloves are off. Makes fun of his terrible fake tan, his crappy shoes, just goes piece by piece and WH parks this dude and says that everything screams cheap. When the people got behind you, when the people got behind me, I gave them a reason to keep going. While you let everyone down, you let Regal down, I always deliver. Meanwhile, you went off to Greece for 3 months because you weren't paid enough and got out-politicked by someone smarter than you. You avoid responsibility and pressure. I live with dignity and respect. I lived in a car here in Austin. I grinded. Next week is a big deal. I'm going to shut you up, and I'm going to take the responsibility off your plate. And with that, MJF just takes this all in and kicks him in the balls and goes to attack him with the ring. Starks ducks, spears MJF, and he leaves the segment holding the belt, getting one up on MJF, but an awesome promo from Ricky Starks, and round of applause to the crowd who just made him feel like a star in this segment.
It was outstanding. And yes, he had the hometown advantage here with a very supportive atmosphere.
Good.
But even without Austin, this would have been a home run segment. This would have been a home run promo from Ricky Starks. And credit to MJF for, bringing some pretty strong material. Yes, this was a segment crafted to make the babyface look good coming out of it. But I don't think MJF treated him lightly. He came in with some pretty strong material here. This crowd was chanting Pebbles. At least a small portion of this very pro Ricky Starks crowd were still chanting Pebble at him. So he had that to overcome. And Ricky Starks, we've known how good he is, on the microphone. It's part of the reason why I think he got his job. I mean, it's entirely the reason I think why he got his job, because in ring he's great, but we have a lot of great in ring guys. What sets him apart from anybody is his ability to talk on the microphone, and he completely exemplified it here. What I loved the most about this segment was that it was not just generic trash talk. It was not just name calling. He had a lot of that. You know, it was like the type of cool babyface, humorous insult that made you want to cheer for the good guy ahead of the cool bad guy. But beyond that, he had substance to his words, talking about how, you know, MJF leaving that autograph signing was simply easy for him because he had no responsibility to an audience that he doesn't like anyway. Starks talked about how when you like the audience, when the audience likes you, you have a greater deal of responsibility that you have to live up to. And the way he ended it with saying, I'm going to do you a favor, little boy, I'm going to take that responsibility away from you, was just beautiful. Wonderfully done. He gave this crowd exactly what they wanted. They came here to see Ricky Starks, and he gave them a heroic moment where he stood tall above the bad guy. And I would say beyond that, like, I don't think he's going to win. And I think most people recognize that he's not going to beat MJF. But what this feud has achieved up until this point is that it's shown that Ricky Starks is capable of being a world title contender, going up against a very, like, you know, a viable world champion in MJF right now. And he's a part of the conversation, and he's shown the world that he can have a world-class promo segment that, you know, you could pair against anything on any show.
Yeah, I really thought this was a great segment, and it had like elements that usually would, like, certainly, like, you call this guy like a, you know, a knockoff of The Rock. It was like, but at the end of this, it was like Stark's comeback was so strong, and it was just like it totally like destroyed MJF's point that you were rallying behind this guy by the end. And there's some baby faces that would not be able to come back during this. But he did in a big way. And these two worked together to create a great segment. And more importantly, make next week's match feel much bigger. And that was the goal of this segment. And both of these guys accomplished that. So I thought this was the most effective thing on the show.
Yeah. I think we could be very critical about like AEW's building of title challengers, especially when it's the first challenger, you know, in a brand new reign. I almost wish like we had more opportunity to hear from Starks in the lead up to this, but man, like, did they achieve a whole lot, you know, in this one show, giving him the Battle Royal, and then giving him this incredible promo segment that was even more important than the Battle Royal win. So we'll see how they book it. You know, like, he can cash in that title opportunity, or sorry, the ring challenge at any point. Does that mean he can like cash it in at the end of the match? It does, right? Because that's what Ethan Page threatened last week.
Yeah.
So he might potentially lose the match, maybe via cheating, and then might challenge him for the ring right afterwards, and maybe go off air with the ring. He
could cash it in before the title match. Could weaken
him. What's the point of that, though?
If you feel you're better than this guy, then he's weakened and beaten and has to come back and defend the title.
There's no guarantee that you're beating him, though. Like, he's fully
You're a babyface. You got to have confidence in yourself, Way.
I guess he could do that,
or he could do it after.
Yeah, we'll see how they book it.
Could you do it during the match? Say, I just have to beat you once.
I guess, yeah. I mean, if we're talking about Seth Rollins rules, right? Like, you can interrupt the match and then
cash in on yourself.
Yeah. Okay.
Jon Moxley is backstage. He stated he's starting to like Hangman Page. He fell off his horse, dusted himself off, and he's back in the saddle and spoke with his fists, which not too many people around here do. There's too much talking. This isn't all elite talking, which I just thought, like, the placement of this, like, we were coming up this awesome talking segment, and then we go to this guy. It's like, this isn't all elite talking or the Blackpool Microphone Club, and said that this is a big weekend for the Blackpool Combat Club at Rampage, at Final Battle. He's sick of the Jericho Appreciation Society, and they'll be in their rear view mirror this weekend, and tells Page he knows where to find him.
I mean, I get the sense it was certainly more targeted towards the JAS and the sports entertainment thing. I also get the sense Moxley does not really give a shit about, like, all of this sort of, like, I don't know, Regal, is he leaving stuff. like throughout the MJF program, towards Full Gear, it felt like he was very disconnected from sort of like what the story MJF was building himself about him possibly being babyface. We got the same Moxley every single time he spoke. It was just like sort of this like trash talking, I'm gonna beat your ass type of promo, and you kind of got that here as well. And even towards the end of the show, no real direct response or addressing of William Regal. Nor like, MJF turning on Regal. It was just like more of the same from Moxley. Enough of this talking angle bullshit. I just want to fight.
Then
we got a Darby Allin thing as well.
Yeah, this was from, I believe, from the Road 2 that they had setting up the match with Samoa Joe for the TNT Championship. And this match was just nuts. So Darby immediately misses a dive to the floor and crashes into the guardrail. And the announcers explained that he hit his hip. And for the first time that I can recall, we had a heel working over the babyface's hip and dropping him on the floor. And just, you weaken the hip and everything else falls apart. That's a very smart strategy.
I mean, he just beat the shit out of him in every which way. And I suppose the hip is a part of that. Yeah.
Joe swings him into the guardrail multiple times, into the apron, then dumps him on the floor and hits a power slam onto the exposed portion of the floor after removing the mat. Oh, Joe then sends Darby from the apron into the post, and Darby like flips and lands on the floor.
He spun like a blade, this dude.
Oh
they
my
should
God.
Sponsor him.
Joe then catches a pescado, but Darby shoves him into the steps and hits a coffin drop off the top to the floor, follows with a stunner and code red in the ring for a 2 count, and then Darby is getting set up for the muscle buster. He bites Joe and goes for the coffin drop and lands in the coquina clutch where he goes out cold. He will not tap, and the referee calls it off at 10 minutes and 28 seconds. This was just a violent demolition of Darby Allin, and Samoa Joe was like the scariest heel during this match. I mean, these two were, I want to say like these two were made for one another, but if they were, it would mean Darby's demise would be by after like match 3, because this guy took an incredible amount of punishment by his own standards. This is this was a notch below the Jeff Hardy match, but not far off. Like he just killed himself in this match.
Yeah. I think it was maybe a notch below the Jeff Hardy match because Darby wasn't diving off his shit as much, but like it was him taking a beating from another man who was very willing to give it rather than like Darby hurting himself. This was very much, I think, when they announced it, for me, like a bit of a dream match without even me realizing that this was even a match that I felt it was a dream match. And I think they lived up to it. And I think that the dream match quality of this was probably something that Darby Allin himself pictured, because I don't think he's taken these sort of bumps just for anybody. Yes, I know how ridiculous that statement sounds when you turn on Rampage and you'll see him doing this sort of similar shit. But I felt like this is even a lot for Darby Allin. We haven't even gotten to the post match yet. I think he recognized how big of a deal a match with Samoa Joe is, and what wonderful chemistry these two have in the David Goliath sense that they were able to create and exemplify here. Maybe the best pairing of a David versus Goliath that you could possibly make on the AEW roster. Joe like was made to look so devastating, It's wonderful that he's a heel now, because with him as a babyface, I don't think you would have had this level of intensity from Joe. And Darby was just all the more willing to play a smaller version of Mick Foley, just getting ragdolled and tossed around. And boy, was it wonderful. Joe's best match in AEW, I thought.
Yeah, this very much was an exaggerated version of like your Vader or Mick Foley kind of layout. And
imagine if Mick Foley was like, I don't know, 130 pounds though. Like how devastating Vader would have looked even more.
Joe's mannerisms too. Like he did the walk off the opening dive, but then when Darby got posted and Joe's perfectly content to take the count out win, and he's flexing, like he's just got it down. Like this is just a great character.
He always had it. We just haven't really been able to see it thus far in AEW.
Joe looks in disbelief as Darby gets up. So then Joe levels him with a headbutt, takes the skateboard, and delivers a muscle buster on top of the wheels of the skateboard, and applies another choke onto Darby. when Wardlow runs down to save Darby, the people are chanting Wardlow. And as you're hearing the chants, Excalibur notes, this Saturday, it's Samoa Joe against Juice Robinson. I was like, this in a nutshell is what is wrong with this buildup, okay? You just saw this kick-ass match, and you're teasing this giant showdown with Wardlow, and you're not getting either of those. You're getting the least appealing option of a guy that's not even on the show here. Like, this wasn't even Juice running out for any reason. Like, it just felt like such, and they might have a great match on Saturday, but if you're asking me if I'm interested in it, I am not right now.
No, I feel terrible for Juice Robinson because he couldn't have been made to look more of sort of a wet blanket than something like this. You give us something as incredible as Darby Allin versus Samoa Joe. I think Wardlow coming out was already a bit of a letdown because you knew that, like, there's no way Wardlow versus Joe is going to be better than Darby versus Joe, and there's certainly no way Juice Robinson is going to be better than either of those. Well, I mean, I don't want to say in ring, but at least in terms of storyline, there's absolutely no reason to care.
There's no story, but I think they will have a good match. But there's nothing to.
Who cares though? Again, good matches happen all the time, right? Like, and granted, no story here for Darby Allin versus Joe as well. So maybe I shouldn't be so quick to judge. Like, I mean, this Juice versus Joe could be incredible, sure. But it just felt so weird, to kind of display it like this with no involvement from Juice whatsoever on this show.
Shivani is with Orange Cassidy and Kip Sabian, and Cassidy says, all you need is to ask, and you can have a title shot. He calls Cassidy a Clementine, and Sabian says he's hurt, so he can't face him on Rampage, but Cassidy tells him to find an opponent for him. So it will be Orange Cassidy defending the All-Atlantic Championship on Friday against Rampage, and I will...
on Rampage against an opponent yet to be named.
Right? Well, it's.
You're gonna.
We'll avoid the spoilers. We'll avoid the spoilers. It's.
Is it somebody to look forward to? Can you at least tell us that?
It's a match.
Okay, so no. All right.
It's
okay. Just spoil it. Okay. Hey, spoiler alert! Spoiler alert.
Well, I want to make sure that this person showed up, and I want to make sure that this was for the Orange Cassidy match that they did. So I will.
Okay, cover. So when I say so, I want all of you who want to avoid spoilers to cover your ears for exactly 10 seconds. Okay.
Well, it was for the Cassidy match, so it was.
Okay. So cover your ears in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. Who was it?
It is Trent Seven.
Okay. That's pretty. I mean, that's big to me, or like big enough to me. That's cool. That's a surprise.
It's they love surprises of people off the roster. I mean, I'm sure it's a very good match, and it looks like they got So anyway, that's coming up on Friday.
Interesting.
Daniel Garcia and Jake Hager against Claudio Castagnoli and Wheeler Yuta. Moxley and Guevara are in the respective corners. Claudio and Hager got in, and the crowd started chanting "We the People" at them. And Garcia shoves Yuta off the top, and then they got the heat on Yuta forever. Went through a break, they're beating him down. Finally, Claudio gets the tag, and he hits multiple European uppercuts onto Hager. And then Claudio goes for a top rope Hurricane Rana to Jake Hager. And I don't know if Jake Hager has ever taken a top rope Hurricane Rana, and this would not be evidence that it's something he should be taking, because he didn't roll forward. Instead, he took this Rana and came down chest first, on his shoulder. I was like, how did this even happen? Maybe Hager, he should not be the one doing this. This can be Garcia's.
Hey man, after the Ali Austin Theory thing on Monday, if the guy wanted to take a bit of a safer bump, I'm not gonna.
Well, maybe he had that in the back of his mind. So anyway, he takes that, and then we have the giant swing gets stopped by Garcia. He flips Garcia. Yuta hits the frog splash, and then Claudio breaks out of the ankle lock, hits the giant swing on Hager. Guevara gets involved, and Moxley takes out Guevara. Hager applies the ankle lock, while Garcia puts on the Dragon Tamer onto Yuta, but Claudio sends Hager into Garcia, uppercut to Hager, and Castagnoli pins his former partner in 12 minutes and 42 seconds going into the Jericho match. And no Jericho again this week.
He like showed up, like he shot some sort of like handheld cell phone video that they edited into a video package prior to this.
Are they doing a countdown show for Final Battle? I don't think they stated anything on the show. I would think if they were, they would have announced it.
Maybe on their YouTube would be something. I'm not really certain, but yeah, kind of disappointing. I would say maybe for like a go home show, you know, for your world title match to not have like a hot promo segment or something from Claudio, but they gave him the next best thing, which was I guess an impressive victory here in a tag team setting. It does not feel like that hot of a match to me, I have to say, by the time we're getting to it the week of.
If Jericho is retaining, do you put the dog collar match on last?
I'm more interested in that. Yeah. I am just because of like the year-long kind of story now, you know, you've essentially got with Briscoes versus FTR.
It's likely the blow off to the year-long series as
thing
well.
Is though, it's like, I mean, Briscoes are down 2-0, right? So do they have that much justification for, like, is it a real story? But it to me, it's the hottest match on the show. I don't know. I don't think you have to. Like, Jericho has been like the face, really the face of ROH up until this point, and I think you could justify him closing the show, but it just, I don't know. It just hasn't felt that hot to me, and it's mainly because I've already seen the match before. You know, Jericho's been doing great, but like I don't know if I've had as much sort of like personality out of Claudio as I've wanted. What do you think?
I would say that if Jericho is retaining and you're not doing some surprise, like someone shows up at the end as Jericho's next big opponent that you want to go off the air with, I would argue like the dog collar match could close the show. Like, that's just going to be a bloodbath. And, you know, it's been the big ROH feud this year. So I could certainly see that. I'm also very curious if they announce at Final Battle, if they're running Mania weekend or not for Supercard.
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah. Who wins? Who wins the dog collar match?
I'm going to say FTR.
3-0 then.
I mean, you could have the tag titles on the Briscoes, but like, it's again, if you have this ROH deal to announce and it's some kind of streaming deal that the Briscoes can appear on, well, then the Briscoes should probably win the belts.
Right. Yeah.
If they have an outlet where they can appear, then yeah, the Briscoes win this one.
A lot of it hinges on that, but I guess I also just wonder about the perception of, like, you know, the Briscoes going down 3-0 in a series with FTR. Yeah, maybe they don't care that much, but yeah, a lot of it will depend on the future. And like, so FTR lost tonight. You know, we're fast forwarding, of course, in the review, but they did not gain the AEW Tag Team Championships. Like, have we ended this sort of Briscoes multi-championship run?
FTRs going for all the belts.
Yeah.
I mean, I certainly could see them starting to lose the belts. If you look at, you know, the winners of the World Tag League that should get the IWGP title shot. Mm-hmm. Like, again, if you've got Dax Harwood openly stating that our deals might be up in April,
right,
you know, you have to be looking at that as like, what is your big culmination? And I don't think people expected it to be tonight, where it was their chance to win all 4 belts.
And that, I mean, this is again purely speculation, but maybe shed some light on the what felt like hotshot booking of this Acclaimed versus FTR match. You know, like, did they see that this was their only opportunity to have FTR challenge for the championships to possibly, you know, give the idea that they might win everything? Are they going to start losing the championships as soon as this Saturday?
Well, again, like, this is all, we're kind of doing guesswork here, but if you're working backwards and there is an ROH deal that does not prohibit the Briscoes from being just pay-per-view attractions, and you add this dog collar match, like, that would be the time for the Briscoes to win, and you go into the new year with the Briscoes having a showcase, and this was your one chance to do it. And we, like, if they got an ROH deal in the last like week or two, you're kind of going backwards. Like, none of this was hinted at before. So you might have been into a corner where, like, this is our best chance to do it, and we want to do a title change at the pay-per-view. But the BCC are all in the ring. Shivani joins them. And then he airs an interview that he conducted with William Regal from 2 weeks ago. So we go to this video, and Regal explains that you will only see this if something bad happens to me. This is like one of those movies where, like, the guy dies and then he left a will on video.
This segment was like Tony Stark in hologram form at the end of Endgame, plus like Anakin Skywalker appearing as a Force ghost in Return of the Jedi, all rolled into one.
He says that he only trusts Giancarlo to tape this, which, I mean, the man has earned his loyalty. And he took great exception to what MJF did to Tony Schiavone, and he was upset about the emails. So he gave MJF what he wanted. He gave him the AEW championship. Now everyone in AEW will be chasing him. And the fact is, the 3 members of the BCC don't need me, but they would never let me go. So I needed to show them why he needs to go. And they can teach Yuta to be the best professional wrestler in the world. Jon Moxley is calculated. He'll understand what all this means. And my final lesson was stay one step ahead. Keep eyes in the back of your head, and I will be BCC until the day I die. Fellas, it's been emotional. And we go back to the ring, and Schiavone says, John, what do you think about this? And dude, Jon Moxley, if he was hearing this for the first time, I was a believer, because he just responds and he's like, you know what? We're going to war this weekend. Final Battle's coming up. I challenge anyone in the world on Rampage. Pro wrestling is about to make a serious statement. Dude, he had nothing. It was exactly. Like, I don't know. I don't know what this was. Give a shit. Like, this was some very creative way to come up with, okay, we've killed Regal. We've got to go back in time for him to give another promo. And somehow this was all done for the benefit of the Blackpool Combat Club. And it was a curse by giving this belt to MJF, who will not be able to handle this. Listen, I respect the hustle, okay? I respect the attempt to make this work. Yeah. And I will give them some leeway that I feel they were trying very hard to make this all make sense. It's not going to meet everyone's satisfaction. No. They did give it a try, which others would not. Yeah.
I think we know that like Tony Khan is somebody who very much takes criticism to heart, and
this was a major hole last week. Like, why did Regal turn on Moxley? We didn't get that answer, and they tried to course correct her.
Yeah, with some I would say pretty blatant retconning. I wouldn't even classify this as that clever or creative. They went the I taped the video message in case I was dead route, which might be the best you could do up until this point. It was incredibly awkward, I have to say, the presentation. And I think the crowd really didn't buy it. You know, they didn't react that great. I will say, though, there was sort of like a, fourth wall breaking benefit to this, where you actually got to see a babyface goodbye from William Regal, not just to the Blackpool Combat Club, but really to the AEW audience. This, we know now at this point, will be his last appearance on the show. And, the chance to kind of get him to speak, to tie up the loose ends that we're left with, that unfortunate part of that storyline, but then also to like just kind of tell the audience that like I'm with you forever. I'm Blackpool Combat Club till I die. I'm trying to think of some like classic movie line that in a similar vein. Anyway, it was at times kind of awkward, but also kind of heartwarming. So. Again, Mox though has no time for this shit. He's like, I don't care about this stupid story, like weird timeline.
He is not the character to come back and say, "I understand, it's okay." Yeah. He cost him the world championship. He should be pissed at this guy. Yeah. Like Moxley should not ever forgive this man in character. Yeah.
But I think it works for Mox though, because he's also like maybe the type of guy who like you could tell maybe he's so overcome with emotion that he just like would rather not talk about it at all, and would therefore like just get into promo mode so that he could ignore it. So it was fine.
Yeah, they obviously this exit of Regal was not desired on AEW's part, and I have complained so many times, especially during all those releases in WWE, where we would tune in and a character is just gone. There's suddenly one less Hit Row member. These people just disappear. There's no even acknowledgement of what happened. So I'm not going to fault the fact that they went above and beyond to try and tie up loose ends here. Like they went to the other extreme of it. So it wasn't perfect. But it was, I will take this versus, just leaving this giant question of why did this dude ever turn on Moxley? And we've got to do the work of figuring it out. And it's never referenced again. Like they wanted to tie up what was the biggest angle from the pay-per-view.
Right.
House of Black does a...
I'm just trying to think like how we could even make this like kind of cornier. Like instead of like Shivani
you
saying,
could have had the cloud bubble. Like it's in Moxley's head. Of like, I wonder why he turned on me.
I was gonna say like rather than Shivani,
he speaks to them from the dead.
Ooh, okay, yeah, like in a puddle somewhere, and like in a reflection in a mirror.
He's like their Obi-Wan.
I feel like there could have been like a videotape on like a VHS tape that somehow hidden, tucked away somewhere that like Moxley would have had to solve several riddles to uncover. Then he have to look for an actual VHS tape, and anyway. they could have gone a lot deeper from it, but I'm glad they didn't do all that.
Then the House of Black give us their mission statement. Malachi says this promotion has allowed itself to be corrupted, and they have used shovels to dig the grave of others. It's time for the House of Black to put down this corruption. Julia Hart says the crime is treason. Matthews says the verdict is war, and Brody King says that they will tear the meat from the bones, and the sentence is extermination.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there's a problem with mice.
You
ever had mice?
Yeah, I have had mice. They're terrible
They're the
to
worst.
deal with.
Awful.
Yeah, they're impossible to catch. You catch mouse poop everywhere. So I would call Brody King, I guess.
You ever catch one in a mousetrap?
I have. Yeah.
Have you been the one that has to dispose of it?
Yes.
It's awful.
Oh, you feel terrible for the poor mouse. They're actually kind of cute. But what can you do? They're a hazard, to our health and our hygiene. So that's what the House of Black are going to do. I think what we just did was a way better promo than what Malachi said here.
The House of Mice. Well, next week, come one, come all. They're in action next week. This was quite the setup for a 6-man tag.
Hey, I think they're still retaining the aura of being incredibly cool here. These are shot incredibly well. You had speaking roles for every single member. They've made Julia Hart feel like such a significant part of this group. She's no longer just I don't know, like an add-on. She's somebody who I think is a very focal part of the whole presentation. She makes the group almost feel whole. So I think they've done a great job presenting these guys, and we're finally going to get their actual opponents next week.
She's now an adult. She's 21 now. Just celebrating her birthday.
She's really ingested those Kiera records, and now she's living it. Yeah.
Then the main event. Tony Schiavone sits down with Jamie Hayter, and Jamie Hayter is on top of the totem pole. She will be watching the Regina D-Wave Championship match this Friday, but neither of them holds a candle to her title. So this Regina D-Wave Championship, established as a nothing belt right off the bat, and she will give the winner a title match against the real belt because she's a fighting champion and a bloody good one at that. A week we waited.
Listen, it was it's only improving an already kind of tough situation. And I wondered if this stipulation was always in place, because I think it would have really probably alleviated a lot of criticisms about the Regina DeWave Championship just all of a sudden getting introduced on AEW television, if they had announced that it was also a number one contendership for the championship. It wasn't just you and I, John, that were another title on a show that already is suffering from too many championships. I saw plenty of that reaction online as well. And it's unfortunate because, Shida holding a belt, I'm sure is a very nice thing. It's a great thing for Wave, but being introduced in this fashion just kind of makes it feel it adds a negative connotation to it. I think what Hayter announced here was just simply them giving some actual real stakes attached to this championship match on Friday.
Jade Cargill and the Baddies versus Kiera, Hogan, Madison, Rayne, and Skye Blue. We got a sequence of pin attempts by Blue and Red Velvet. Grays in with the step-up knee, and then they work over Skye Blue after she's trapped in the ring skirt throughout the break. Heat on Blue, then Jade, who has not been tagged in yet. Blue stops the final slice from Velvet, and then we get double super kicks. Hogan and Jade get tagged in, and Hogan sends Gray and Velvet to the floor. There's a sliding kick to Cargill, and then Jade comes back with the big spine buster. Jaded gets blocked, and in comes Rayne, and she tries for a ripcord, and it gets stopped by an elbow from Jade and hits Jaded. 8 minutes and 12 seconds, and Cargill pins Madison Rayne.
I thought the match was fine. I was kind of expecting more from Kiera Hogan here, being that like she was the one that was kicked out of the group. That she was the one with sort of like the fresh babyface spotlight. Had the hot tag, and I thought like looked decent, but like it was so brief that I don't know if she made that much of an impression on me coming out of the match.
Blue did is like like she's like a good babyface that has something there. I mean, she's still like in her development phases, but she got a nice focus in this match.
Who really stood out to me though was Red Velvet. I was so happy to see her back. I thought she showed really good heel charisma and like a level of increased aggression and confidence in ring. It definitely felt like she was trying to make up for lost time, and I thought she looked great here.
Then Shivani interviews Saraya, and Britt Baker walks in and remarks that Full Gear was the biggest win of Saraya's career, and that she was gifted a match with the biggest star on pay-per-view. So she hands Saraya tickets to the Kia Forum on January the 11th, where you can either sit in the crowd or we can have another match, but reveals it will be a tag match where Baker will team with Jamie Hayter and Saraya can go find a partner. So let the speculation begin. I don't think it'll be Trent Seven.
I don't know why you would mention Trent Seven in the middle of this AEW Dynamite review. For people, Anyway,
sorry.
This feels
I recorded that 2 weeks ago.
It feels really early to build to a match in January 11th. Like this scene happened, and I was like, is this taking place next week? Is it taking place the week after? There's a whole month, more than a month before this.
It's got to be something big.
Like, is it a big edition of Dynamite or something?
It's LA. It's the Forum. So like that is a big Dynamite.
Okay, I guess so. But like when you're having to build to an ROH Final Battle, when you're trying to build a Rampage and Winter is coming, like it felt like a little bit too much to juggle. But this is probably like a month-long story that they're just introducing.
Yeah, and you're going to certainly set expectations high of like who this partner is going to be that they're giving this such a big build-up on here.
Any guesses?
I don't guess.
Other than the one you made?
Yeah, there's people we can rule out, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, let us know in the comments.
Rampage on Friday. So, if you have not read the spoilers, it is Orange Cassidy against TBA for the All Atlantic Championship. Hikaru Shida and the Bunny for the Regina DeWave Championship. Ruby Soho and Ty Mello will speak about their feud. Lee Moriarty and Morrissey in action. Athena will speak, and Jon Moxley versus Konosuke Takeshita, which this is not a spoiler. It sounded like it was a great match from those that were in the arena.
Okay, wonderful. Big reaction in arena for it, and Takeshita is sort of like that perfect Rampage
we can
opponent.
Put this guy with anyone, and it's going to be, that sounds cool.
Yeah, exactly.
So. Final battle. We can go through the card here. So we've got 7 matches announced for the show. So Jericho and Castagnoli. You're expecting Jericho to retain, I assume?
I don't know, actually. That one's, I mean, obviously, like,
the question is, who do you have left after this? Like, Joe seems like it wouldn't make sense at this point to challenge Jericho.
Well, Brian's tied up with MJF, so I guess that's not happening. They could rematch.
You could put the belt on Claudio. But again, like a lot of this is hinging. Like if you are starting, and granted, they could have a TV deal. They could have a streaming deal. Like they could have no deal. That would greatly, like if you had a TV deal with like a significant broadcaster, I'd keep this belt on Jericho. I would want to get that show off to the biggest start possible. And that means Jericho holding this belt to get that show up and running.
It's true, but we also don't know like if there are other circumstances. Like, does Jericho have other commitments outside of professional wrestling that where he would want to drop a belt so that to free him from to allow to do? Like, does Tony have other plans for Jericho? On the AEW side of things that he'd want. I feel like a lot of that like comes into play with these sort of decisions. But I could kind of see it either way. John, I would obviously prefer the Ring of Jericho run to continue because it's been great so far, very entertaining. But I can also see them wanting to like tie the story up, give it to Claudio, and then move Jericho onto something else.
We just got to get to Jericho and Loki, don't we?
I wonder if that one's happening.
Hey, Chris, who'd you need a challenger? Brand new TV deal. Haven't been on TV too long.
Oh, goodness.
An oldie but a goodie.
I missed the Loki impression, if anything,
Yes.
just for that.
The man that could have been the Undertaker's long-lost child or something. Did you see this? Brian Gewirtz put out a tweet of like ideas that they like threw out, like not serious ideas, but ones that they at least discussed. And Caval being, it was like the Undertaker's child or something like that. It was amusing.
I'm trying to think like, would that work genetically? Like, are we talking like a supernatural child, like somebody he just kind of conjured?
The Undertaker's secret son would have been Caval.
Interesting. That means he would be related to Kane.
Oh my goodness! What a family dinner that would be. I think
Sarah could join.
Yes, I'm sure that Loki and Kane would be seated on the right side of the table for sure. Yeah. Would anyone be vaccinated?
I think the left side would be completely empty for that particular dinner.
That would be it. It would be quite the dinner. All right, moving on from that was our ROH preview. Daniel Garcia and Wheeler Yuta for the Pure Championship. Mercedes Martinez against Athena for the women's title. I certainly see Athena picking up the belt here.
Mm-hmm. I think, she's been great. Yeah.
Samoa Joe, Juice Robinson for the TV title. I'm not looking forward to this match, but I echo everyone's sentiments that I just felt like they have presented this to you as so inconsequential. That's what it feels like. So it's on them to really deliver here, and they very well could. Like, Juice Robinson needs a big performance. He had a very disappointing G1. This is a new setting. Hopefully, an audience that is receptive to him, but also one that may not be at the same time. So
yeah, like Tony, I believe had stated something about like Juice possibly going back to New Japan if he won the TV title. I suppose. Like I almost wonder if he's almost like sort of this transitional, ROH New Japan talent, or even AEW New Japan talent. That is he still part of the Bullet Club or what?
I mean, it sounds like he's signed to AEW, but
right. But in story, is he still part of the Bullet Club?
In story, they could still be. He's a New Japan. He at least has that connection. Swerve and Our Glory are back together to take on Shane Taylor and JD Griffey. I actually think this match will be pretty damn great. I think that Keith Lee and Shane Taylor, I think they're gonna like go all out in this match. So I'm curious to see this, and they are in Texas, so I think that you are gonna have people that are familiar with, especially with Keith Lee from his beginning stages, and Shane Taylor for that matter too. So this is one that will be interesting to see how the crowd takes to it. But I think it will be a very good match between these two, and the question is how much it's been built up for your national audience to really be into this one. I mean, even if you were watching ROH, I mean, we're years removed from these two teaming together in ROH.
Right. But it's an introduction to Shane Taylor and JD Griffey, for using
Taylor has gotten, like, those last few years in ROH, like, he really upped his game significantly, lost a ton of weight. He could have just floundered after Keith Lee left, and he did anything but.
Yeah, and again, these ROH shows are as much, I think, about trying to make attractive cards as they are, I think, to try to build up a roster and getting some of these ROH originals back, introducing them with AEW guys is potentially something very beneficial. This is an afternoon show. It's going to start at 4 p.m. Eastern, so that means this is 0 hour is going to be 3 p.m.
3,
man.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, that'll be different.
Yeah. I don't know how I'm going to watch these shows this weekend. Dalton Castle and the boys defending the 6-man tag titles against Brian Cage and the Gates of Agony. They're back. Mm-hmm. And then we have the double dog collar match that was announced at the end of the show. ROH tag title match between FTR and the Briscoes, which I think you have two options to close this show. And I feel like this dog collar match ending the show would be today. That would be my call, but we will see. Like, certainly they could have their reasons. And closing with the title match, you can understand that. If Claudio's winning the belt, certainly you could say, I just imagine following this match, which I just think is probably going to be 30 minutes and everyone's going to bleed buckets. Following that is going to be insane.
I'm with you. I think you win with Briscoes versus FTR. It's almost like a way to wrap up the year, with a year-long story. So, I'm picking Briscoes.
I think that if you have this deal in place, the Briscoes getting the win, it makes a lot of sense. And then winter is coming next week. MJF and Starks, Death Triangle against the Elite, match number 4. And then the House of Black in action is what has been announced, where they are in Garland, Texas. Main event, the Acclaimed and FTR for the tag titles. Max Caster rapped about FTR standing for Find the Remote. And they're going to lose like Herschel Walker, which got a pretty good reaction here in Texas.
He lost the Senate elections.
Yeah, in the Georgia runoff. I could imagine that there were some Texans that might have been disappointed with that outcome, but not in this building. They seem to love the line. Jarrett, Lethal, and Satnam Singh were watching in the back, but didn't get involved in any way. The Acclaimed end up applying double sharpshooters to FTR, who have to break free out of their Idols finisher. FTR then get out and they catapult Max from underneath the ring and they take over here. Bowens eventually gets the hot tag and hits an Ushigoroshi onto Dax, and then FTR hit a spike pile driver onto Bowens, and Taz mentions that's how he broke his neck back in the 90s. They try for a double team vertical onto Bowens, but Max comes back spearing Cash, and then Bowens gets the inside cradle on Dax, and at this point, we're going for near falls. And listen, if you want to get into near falls in an AEW main event, you do what I did, and you be like 2 minutes behind the live feed because you're looking at the clock. And dude, I'm expecting all of these near falls to be the end because I'm looking at the time, not realizing they've actually got 3 minutes left instead of 1. It was like, I think I stumbled upon something. Like, you want to add drama? Screw up your DVR. Okay. That's the way to do it. Very dramatic ending here, Way. Cash knocks Bowens off the apron. The powerplex is stopped. Bowens hits the arrival. Max misses the mic drop. And then a gory bomb is hit to Bowens and then lights up Max with multiple lariats, a power bomb, and Cash goes for the jackknife cover, but Max blocks it, hooking the legs and pinning Cash in 16 minutes and 42 seconds. This was really heated by the end. Again, a huge plus from this crowd who just really lifted this one up even more. And, the Acclaimed have had a really nice run of tag matches over these last couple of months. And I thought that this one, they got super hot by the end of it.
We're approaching a lot of year endless. And I think the topic of best tag team is going to be definitely a close race between two teams. I wonder if for a lot of people it'll be a close race between 3 teams, because I think you could definitely enter the Acclaimed into that conversation.
Most improved is like the Acclaimed are going to be on a lot of lists.
Totally. Like from an in-ring perspective, they're not on the level of the Usos or FTR, but as a complete package, you can certainly make the argument. But to me, in-ring, they answered. I feel they're continuing to break down a lot of those questions too. This was a match that proved to me that they don't just need Swerve in Our Glory to have these sort of show stealing matches. Obviously, being in there with FTR is not such a handicap either. Okay, but it takes both teams to be to create something as great as this match was. I thought Anthony Bowens looked excellent in here, as he always continues to do. Cash, I thought, was fantastic here as well. Great sequences, very good false finishes, and they moved at a speed that I think was also very impressive for this style of more technical professional wrestling. Very strong match.
Yeah, they did a great job here. All of them, including FTR, scissor after the match. And then the Gun Club appear on the screen, calling them trash, and reveal a Christmas card. And the card reads, "It's from dem boys. calling for a double dog collar match at Final Battle, and the Guns say Merry Christmas, bitch. I thought, sorry, but I was just going to say that sometimes like we just groan at like swerves. This to me was the kind of swerve that like all of this has been building up towards the Gun Club, and in the end, the payoff is you're not getting this match at the pay-per-view. You're getting this match, and I thought this was a great end for the show.
I thought, I mean, you know, forget FTR. I thought this was the greatest gift the Gun Club gave us. They gave us the gift of the Gun Club not wrestling at Final Battle, and instead giving us the Briscoes. This was amazing. I mean, I wonder if this was always the plan. Honestly, like, I wonder, how, like, where the Briscoes. I have to imagine the Briscoes were always going to be a part of this, but like storyline wise, it you had no hint of that whatsoever. And I think that, you know, they would have been at least free to tease the Briscoes up until this point, but it was all very much a build from with the Gun Club versus FTR, and they're instead giving us, I think, more the match that people are looking forward to in ring, the match that is definitely more of a pay-per-view draw in this Briscoes versus FTR match. Doing it again, maybe every ROH pay-per-view from this point on will just have FTR versus the Briscoes.
They'll just keep doing it until the Briscoes are allowed on television. Yes. So there you go. That was Dynamite. I thought a very good show on Wednesday night. And for me, at least, like I did feel like it was paced out a bit better. We did have 5 matches instead of the usual 6. And that promo segment was, to me, way more valuable than shoehorning a 6th match in. That was the most effective segment on the show for me. And you got a really great tag title match, a great TNT title match. I enjoyed the Battle Royal. Ricky Starks was probably most people's pick for like star of the show. And then your results may vary when it comes to the handling of Regal, and you know, the tag match was all right, the women's match was all right, but the latter to me were the standouts on the show, and just a great crowd. They truly came through in the big segments, and none bigger than with Ricky Starks, that he really felt like a top babyface.
Mm-hmm. I'm almost looking forward to Rampage just to see more of this Austin crowd. You know, I thought a very good show between the main event. I think the incredible work they did with Ricky Starks in that segment with MJF, and also the Battle Royal, to Darby Allin versus Samoa Joe. You know, which I think, man, I think that was my match of the night. You know, and I'm having a tough time comparing that to the main event. I thought both were tremendous. You know, some maybe iffiness here and there, but overall a very good show.
Feedback time. We will take any super chats if you have them, and we have feedback from the forum, which I can kick things off if you'd like, Way.
We actually have a couple super chats here. And first of all, John Cino informed us in the chat that Roosh just put out a video teasing Jalistico coming in for Final Battle. So we'll see if that gets added, because 0 Hour has no matches announced yet, and it feels like a relatively thin.
Is Dragon Lee coming back for revenge? After Andrade and Roosh turned on him, remember at the end of that,
eventually
that Dynamite. No, okay,
maybe eventually. So more matches to come, I would imagine, for 0 Hour for sure, and then maybe even the show proper. But we also have from John Kleinchester a lot of support from our people from the site here. John Kleinchester sends $2, says Rampage ratings are bad, but could ROH take it? Meaning, you know, could ROH take the 10 o'clock spot on Fridays?
I wouldn't be doing that. I don't think like an ROH branded show is going to perform better than an AEW branded show.
No, I don't think so either. Yeah, I mean, no, of course, with the caveat that like this is first run ROH programming with your heavies, like potentially a Chris Jericho, but the Briscoe can't be on. I also sense, like, you know, Tony Khan already has AEW Rampage established. It's already collecting a certain amount of money for him. He bought ROH so that he can have another deal, so that he can make more money on top of what he's already getting with Rampage. So I don't simply think it's about like making ROH, I don't know, like have a home. It's about making money, and significant money, off of ROH.
Yeah, no, I cannot see that happening.
Let's go to Jake from the Windy City, who says, who sends a $2 super chat. Thank you so much, Jake, for the support. He says, on March 14th, summon Greg from the Peg. We must.
The most obscure references always come from Jake. Yes, we've got AEW announced they're going to be in Winnipeg on March 14th, a Tuesday night edition of Dynamite at the Canada Life Center, which is the main arena in Winnipeg. So, I mean, Winnipeg you would think would be on their radar for Canada. So they will be going there in March.
Yeah, and
which is a holiday here in Canada. It is Wei Ting Day.
That is correct. It is also my birthday.
Everything shuts down.
So I will be working on my birthday, which would be fine. I'm happy to. But involvement obviously from Chris Jericho and Kenny Omega, you would imagine, on the show. Maybe
Don Callis. You have the Winnipeg contingent there for March. All right,
let's go to Muggin. Who we have more, John? You think we're done? Muggin sends a $2.79 super chat. Thank you, Muggin. He says Carmelo and Roxanne are my picks to win on Saturday.
Okay, yeah.
What does the winner get again?
Title shots. So Roxanne, you could do. I mean, it's essentially Carmelo going for the main title, or Roxanne doing the rematch with Mandy Rose. Those are possible. Yeah. Again, I don't have like a strong feeling on the match. I think there's multiple ways that you can go, and it's likely building up for like television matches. You would assume, because it looks like the next special is until February.
Again, our friends at Poison Rana, Braden and Davey, will be live right here at youtube.com/postwrestling with their NXT Deadline post show, as well as on the main Post Wrestling feed after the event is done. We got a Hansi who sends $7. Thank you so much, Hansi, for the support. He says, if baby faces can cut promos to counter MJF stuff like Starks did, then this Reign of Terror will be dope. Was this Joe's best match in AEW thus far? It was for me.
I'd have to think about that. I don't know off the top of my head. It was a very good match, but he's had several very good matches since coming in.
Yeah, I felt that today was at a different level, but sure, maybe it's a question you ask me like a month from now, Hansi, if I can remember it. And the last one comes to us via super chat from PM Train, who says, "Is BBW Morrissey going over?"
Getting over.
Is he getting over?
I think he's there. Big Bill, big things for Big Bill in Big 2023.
I think this push will be big and beautiful. So yeah.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for the super chats. Always appreciated. We now go over to forum.postwrestling.com. Sal from California. Ricky Starks really impressed me tonight. Watching him go toe-to-toe on the mic with MJF while his hometown crowd went wild was a great moment. I'm looking forward to the title match next week.
Let's go up next to, Muggin, who has his thoughts here on AEW. He says, Ricky Starks' rebuttal to all of Friedman's low-hanging fruit insults were excellent. I thought going in that the Diamond Ring was going to get defended separately since he has the world title. I guess not, since it'll be winner take all. Does he know that he can't have everything? Did they state that? That it'll be winner take all?
They said he can cash it in whenever he chooses.
Yeah, he just happens to have both opportunities, but he doesn't have to put them both
I didn't
on the
read
line.
it as that he has to challenge next week. Like, they went out of their way to say the winner gets to choose.
Right. He also says Regal's final promo was as good of an exit as that I can ask for, and I hope this JAS BCC feud comes to an end at Final Battle. It has dragged on and on for months. FTR Acclaimed was the match of the night, and I love that it was a skin of their teeth victory for them. Top guys and them boys going at it one final time, and a dog collar match is going to be worth the price of admission.
Well, they made it pretty clear on the show tonight. Like, this is the end of the BCC Jericho program on Saturday. Next one up is from Patrick. Thought tonight's show continued a streak of strong dynamites with Chicago last week and now tonight. Incredible promo from Starks, probably his best since joining AEW, and it really made him feel like a main eventer. It was also nice to hear Jamie Hayter get to speak on her own, and setting up Hayter versus Sheeta could be a truly great match to kick off this reign. Thought Joe and Darby was fantastic, but the match of the night is without a doubt the Acclaimed and FTR. They tore the house down in what has to be Caster and Bowen's best match of their career. Also, even with with Rampage not having a super thrilling lineup, it's nice to see a continued increase of women's division stuff, with Rampage this week now featuring advertised matches and segments for Athena, Ty Mello, Ruby Soho, Hikaru Shida, and the Bunny.
Joe Smo in the chat is saying that the graphic said winner take all. Brian is saying that as well. So I guess he's decided to cash it in during the same match.
Okay. All right.
So I wonder if that telegraphs MJF keeping the ring for another year.
I guess that's an option that they can go to.
Okay, well, thank you guys for that clarification. We go to, finally, Cody from Maine, who says, credit where it's due. The crowd tonight in Austin took the show to a different level. Add them to the short list of cities where a hot crowd should be expected. They earn that reputation. That said, I thought AEW responded well to a concerning prior week. Not only with this show, but clearly treating Rampage with more respect. And how could it not be a thumbs-up show when they hit you over the head with the idea of the BCC-JAS feud finally ending?
Wow, there's a lot of people happy to see this feud coming to an end, which it appears it will be. All right. Well, thank you, folks, for the feedback, for the super chats, and for staying up late with us on Rewind-A-Dynamite. Coming up, by the way, on Thursday, I'm going to be doing an extra chat on the site. I'm going to be joined by our longtime friend, Cody Saftik. He is going to come on to chat about the UFC betting scandal. I thought,
perfect.
This is a guy who knows the MMA wagering game inside and out. So he's going to explain it all to me, and we'll chat a bit about UFC 282 as well. So look out for that on the free feed. And then Friday night, I'm back with Way, Rewind to SmackDown, 11 Eastern, following SmackDown and Rampage. So look out for that. The Kurt Angle birthday celebration happening on Friday. And then Saturday, 2 post shows here on the site with the NXT Deadline post show with Braden and Davey, and Kate and Way with the Final Battle post show. So
that one will be on the cafe, talking about ROH.
That is right.
So sign up right now, postwrestlingcafe.com, $6 through Patreon, $8 through YouTube, or free trial through iTunes. Or sorry, not iTunes. That doesn't exist anymore. Apple Podcasts, if you choose to give us a shot. We do a lot of hard work, throughout the site, and especially on our Patreon for all of our patrons through all of our platforms. So if you enjoyed the stuff, give us a subscribe, or if you really like us, then consider signing up.
We hope you check it out, postwrestlingcafe.com, and we will speak with you many more times this week. Good night.